Lost. His credits also include World War Z, Prometheus, Tomorrowland. He even did a story for Phineas and Ferb a few years ago. It is Damon Lindelof. Next up, his credits include Flash Forward, Life. He even created the animated series Fillmore, but you probably know him best right now as the executive producer of a little show called The Walking Dead. It is Scott Gimple. Next up, you know this guy on camera for things such as playing Andre on The League. He's on Fresh Off the Boat. He executive produced the Hot Wives of Las Vegas. Scheer RL on YouTube. Wet Hot American Summer, First Day of Camp. Crash Test. The list goes on. His next project is he's doing the late night show right now, Saturday nights on Fox, called Party Over Here. It is Paul Scheer. Next up, her credits include The New Normal, Glee, Chuck, Just Shoot Me, Family Guy, and the OG 90210. Now she's the showrunner and executive producer of Supergirl, Adler. Her credits include Dexter, The OC, Party of Five, and these Twilight movies you may have heard of. Now she's the executive producer of Marvel's Jessica Jones. It's Melissa. And his credits include Workaholics, Chuck, Reaper, Drawn Together, The Ali G Show, and The League. Now he's the executive producer of Ash vs. Evil Dead, Craig DiGregorio. Welcome, guys.
Our standing ovations got shorter each time.
You wore them out, Paul. You wore them out. Guys, we've done this panel for 5 years in a row now, and every year I'd like to start out by sort of explaining to folks who don't quite know what a showrunner is, what their life is like. What do they do? How would you, Damon, describe being a showrunner and what your day is like producing this show?
I think it's a different job for probably all of us. We all do it in different ways, and we probably all were writers on other shows where the showrunners did it slightly different than we did it. But I think that the best way of describing it is you are the person who is the net. You know, so if the show is basically walking the high wire at any given time, and it is, and it's going to fall and break its neck at any given time, and it is, you're the person who's there to catch it. And so all the anxiety that I've ever experienced as a result of this job is the feeling of like, if I don't catch the show, it's going to die. So it's a terrible job, really. That's what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, you sort of wake up worried, and you go to bed worried, and then you don't sleep.
I think that, like parenting, it's like you're the mom or the dad, and as you were saying, the show sort of falls if you don't catch it, but you're everything to everyone.
Yeah, you can't check out at any given step. Like, you have to be there for the inception all the way until someone's asking you if that gray is the right gray for when it gets on TV. It's like, it's the most minute, boring stuff after a certain point. Like, yeah, we did it! Oh, now I gotta listen to like 10 music cues to decide. You know, it's like, it's long.
I think it's you desperately have to see something. You desperately have to bring something to life and get all these talented people to do it in every way, whether it's writing, whether it's music, whether it's editing, whether it's props, whether it's greens, and then you have to make it happen. You have to make it be, and at the end of the entire conveyor belt, you have to take all those pieces and put them together. And you do stuff like this, and you speak awkwardly like I do.
And Melissa, kind of compare working in film versus being back in TV, and you know, film, it feels like it's a little more of a solitary life than being a showrunner on a big TV show.
It is very much solitary life, and it's not as fun a place for a writer, because you don't have control. You know, when you're most features are, when you're writing, you're the most important person in the world, and you hand in the script and it's crickets. And with show running, you know, I mean, as Scott was saying, you are in every frame of that episode, of that show, down to whether or not there's false eyelash. I mean, if you do it the way I do, which is I'm a complete control freak. You know, what color the gray is, or, you know, the music cues. So while it's incredibly overwhelming and you're making an unbelievable number of decisions on any given day, you also have control. It's your vision. So it's a much happier place to be for writers, I think.
I think, you know, to your point too, I feel like what people assume a director is on a big movie, that's kind of what a showrunner is in real life. It's like you're seeing a vision, you're casting it, you're making all those choices, you're picking every little part of it, and it's really, you're running every aspect of it.
And to that end, there's a whole other side that's bananas, but you have to be involved in it and you have to go deep with it, which is the business of it. You get X amount of resources to make your show. And so you have to keep in mind how much that VFX is going to cost you.
They
and how
told me
much
there'd be no math, but there's a lot of
there's
math.
a lot of math. There's negotiation. There might be a little politics in show running.
You have to show up for stuff on time.
Yes.
I'm curious, Craig, what is your blood budget on ASH? Because you guys, you expel a lot of blood.
Yeah, it's all practical. So that's what we spend. I mean, we filmed in New Zealand to save money.
Yeah, that's really so cool about that, because they let people just kill themselves for
exactly.
really cool.
We drained a bunch of real blood to have on our show.
You guys should upcycle your blood.
Oh, we could do that. We'll recycle.
All right, let's talk. Yeah.
Like a gray water system for blood, just on the set, just pouring off.
We use Nicotero brand blood. I mean,
We would love some of that.
all right, well, we'll see what we can do.
Well, speaking of blood and gore and everything else, one of the things when I was thinking about this panel today and your shows, and then looking at the headlines and realizing we're in this bizarro political year, it does seem apropos to talk about the apocalypse and the end of the world. And so many of you are dabbling in that right now. First off, Scott, what do you make of this? And by the way, walkers aren't looking so bad right now if the direction we're going. But what is the draw right now with so many shows that sort of delve into the end of the world or a changing world?
Well, I think that the apocalypse has sort of captured people's imaginations to peel away all the artifice, all the nonsense. Like, without judgment, yesterday was a crazy day in political news that had people calling each other names that I hadn't heard people call each other since 7th grade. I had not heard sniveling used like that. And when everything goes down and society drifts away, you don't have to worry about that. You don't have to worry about the internet. You don't have to worry about Twitter. You don't have to worry about your mobile phone, any of that. It's just you're focused up. You don't even have to worry about your job. It's just you staying alive, hopefully you and your family staying alive, and you staying you. Not changing, not being made into something like the monsters that you're fighting.
Well, Ali, in the case of Supergirl, there's you know, the world is in turmoil, there's change going on, but you're dealing with heroes, you're dealing with someone who can affect change. And is there, you know, how much of that is blue sky and wish fulfillment, but how far do you go down the road of mythology and sort of a darker place?
Well, in terms of what Scott was just referring to, and we like to think of her as hope, and she wears both red and blue. So she, Supergirl for president. But she just has this really happy, joyous, hope spirit, and brings that, I think. And I think in this tumultuous time can offer that as, you know, something we'd all like to aspire to, is helping our fellow people. And
I heard a few truthers, by the way, out here who said she's not eligible since she wasn't.
Fair enough.
Krypton question.
But how about Jessica Jones for?
Yeah, she kicks a certain person's butt. Yeah.
Talk about that. It's a much smaller level. You're dealing boots on the ground. It's Hell's Kitchen, but a character who has dealt with some dark forces, and you even end season 1 where she's got a big win, but it's not everything. It's still it doesn't solve everything.
Well, it's interesting. We were talking about Supergirl. Jessica Jones is also about hope. In that she's a survivor. She has not let any of this, take her down. But in the beginning of the season, the greatest assault that was done to her was she was forced to become a murderer. And at the end, spoiler alert.
Yeah, there are going to be a lot of spoilers today.
Okay.
So.
In the end, she's forced to become a murderer again. And this is not, in our show, murder is not something that is, this is a life-changing thing. So, again, it's a sort of pro-life, not that kind of pro-life, pro-choice that she embraces.
Well, that brings up a good question about death. Because death is obviously something that all of you sort of grapple with in your shows, and it's kind of the classic damned if you do, damned if you don't. The fans get pretty upset sometimes when you kill off a favorite character, but on the flip side, sometimes if you don't, they get a little annoyed as well. I mean, Damon and Scott especially, you guys dealt a little bit with this year in your shows, and you had characters who, there was a big question whether or not they actually died. And talk about fan reaction and how that played into how you move forward with that.
It's an immensely complicated issue and also a very simple one. I think one of the reasons, and I can't speak for Scott, but he and I...
Well, no, please.
This is what Scott would say.
Thank you.
We do process the storytelling, probably most of the people up here right now, as fans first, and it's always a bit surreal to actually be in control of life or death decisions on your show. But we also have a room full of writers and a team of collaborators who, especially over seasons, you come to trust. And you kick the tires of these ideas, and there are many instances where you say, should we kill so-and-so, and then the system rejects that idea, and then there are times where you say, should we kill so-and-so, and the system accepts that idea, and it usually models very closely what the fan reaction is going to be. But at the end of the day, I think the engine, particularly in the stakes of these shows, when you're dealing with life and death issues or people who are trying to overcome incredible obstacles, they would just be completely and utterly boring to watch if you didn't kill anyone. And so the question just becomes, how do you kill these characters? Understanding that the fan reaction is going to at times be vitriolic, and accepting that, understanding that that's going to happen, but hopefully over time the fans understand that this is kind of the decision that you made for a variety of reasons. And as much as we are fans first, if we always sat down and basically said, is this going to upset the fans, I kind of feel we'd never do anything, because as a fan of pop culture myself, I get upset by a lot of stuff, but there's good upset and then there's bad upset, and you hopefully stay on the right side of it.
Can you talk a little bit more about Justin Theroux's character, Kevin? And he actually died twice in season 2. But came back. But talk a little bit about that, and sort of, obviously it allowed you to sort of explore that character deeper with this sort of other dimension to some degree, and his unresolved issues, and his relationship even with Patty in that alternative world. Walk us through sort of the process with that character.
I'll talk in vaguer terms on the assumption that nobody here watches The Leftovers, because,
we got some fans.
There are a lot of us who are behind.
I appreciate it. I don't want to spoil anything, but I do think that one of the things that was happening last year, just in pop culture in general, certainly it's not a spoiler in Game of Thrones to say they did something like this with Jon Snow at the end.
Forget it, I'm out of here.
Yeah. I'm being as vague as possible, but when it's your main character, I think, like, if Allie killed Supergirl, there would be a fundamental understanding not that any Kryptonian, but that okay, she's coming back, and I think for us, we basically tried to play 2 chess moves ahead and said, we're gonna have fun. We're not just gonna kill Kevin once. We're gonna kill him twice. We're not gonna kill him at the end of an episode in a way that it makes the audience feel like, did they actually do that? Or, so that the next episode he's coming back immediately. So we try to be a little bit more playful with it because he is the lead character. The audience's expectation that we would never kill him. I wonder, is The Leftovers even a kind of show that is functioning in that same sort of pulp language? So we're having all of those conversations, and at the end of the day, I think that when you kill a character, all of us are striving to do the same thing, which is not do the same thing. Kind of find a new way to do it. Be aware of the people who have done it before, learn from it, sort of subvert expectations. Scott and I were just talking earlier. I was on The Talking Dead as a huge fan of The Walking Dead the night that Glenn died, and I was devastated and upset. And Hardwick and I were in this little room eating, crudités, cursing your name, and just then the fan machinery sort of kicked in, but you had done something that hadn't been done before in that way, and I think that you want all those emotions to be experienced, and then 4 or 5 weeks later, and in the grand scheme of things, when people are binging the show several hours later, which is the way that everyone's going to watch the show years from now, people are going to say, what a relief. So you just have to, I think that more than anything, the fans want us to try to subvert expectations. They want us to surprise them. They want us to earn it, but they really want us to care for these characters because, trust me, just as much as you guys care about our characters, we care about them just as intensely. We're never doing this. We're certainly not doing it for ratings, right, Scott?
I'm not aware of the ratings.
Well, Damon, my weird takeaway from that is Heaven is a sort of a nice, well-appointed mid-range hotel in downtown Austin.
Exactly. That's the believable version.
So Scott, talk a little bit more. Obviously,
I was really hoping to dodge that.
I get the feeling I'm going to be very upset with you in a couple of weeks. The finale, so I know you can't say anything, but can you talk a little bit about that? Sort of, obviously,
the Glenn of it?
Yeah, the fans really care.
Oh, yeah, they do really care, and that's unbelievable, and that's a privilege, and yeah, we aren't playing around with that. I think, okay, I'll take a little trip here. Reality television, I think when people watch it, a lot of times it's about you being you, remaining yourself, not really identifying with the person on stage, just sort of like laughing at that crazy housewife that's a real housewife of someplace, a real housewife.
I hear you.
Or those crazy people that have to eat scorpions, or not talking about Fear Factor, that was a while ago. But with a show like the ones that we do, we want you to feel like the characters. We want you to go through the things that the characters go through. We don't want you to sit there and judge them. We want you to be part of them, part of that group. And so what happened with Glenn was about putting the audience in the shoes of everybody else in the group except Glenn. To have that uncertainty, to go through that questioning and that hoping, and then finally at the end of it to be rewarded, to have that moment of, hopefully of joy, to see that he's alive. And to deliver that, we're asking to put the audience through something. And that's weird, because entertainment isn't always about just getting exactly what you want when you want it. That delayed gratification hopefully will build towards an even bigger reaction, a bigger emotional reaction, and that's what we were going for.
Well, and obviously you're dealing with something where, readers of the graphic novel know a certain truth about what happened.
Yeah.
And so you're also having to react to that. Sometimes you follow the direction of the graphic novel, sometimes you don't. And so sometimes people are upset that they are. So,
well, I mean, I started out with The Walking Dead as a reader of the comic before the show existed. And when I saw the poster, I was like, oh, I'm really excited about that show. The first year I was a viewer, I wasn't working on the show for the first 6 episodes, and I I like trying to pursue the emotions that Robert got out of the readers. But to do that, especially to the people who have already experienced that with the book, it's trying to, you know, do them with different characters, to do them in different ways, to maintain that surprise, or that anger, or that sadness, or that joy.
Ali, let's talk about peeling back the onion. You know, this is season 1 of Supergirl, so, you know, we're you know, hopeful, fingers crossed, it sounds like we're going to be getting season 2. Leslie Moonves pretty much said that we're going to. But
we're really hopeful.
We'll be finding out shortly. But, you know, in sort of plotting out, and by the way, you're the only one on stage who has to do, how many episodes did you do this season?
20.
20. That's twice as much as some of the folks on stage.
It's
so.
a super big task.
Yeah.
For sure. And one thing we didn't talk about is, in terms of show running, is delegation. And making sure you've hired people that you trust, that are incredibly inspirational, and that you can at some point leave one room to go to another yuckier room to eat more yucky food. So it's just like running from room to room, eating food, and as you say, choosing what color gray is most special.
That's all, Paul.
It was a deep
I have a lot of gray knowledge. Want to talk about different shades? We got it.
No, I'm sorry, peeling back the onion.
But peeling back the onion, you know, a couple weeks ago, the world found out about John Jones, and I always love, like, my favorite part on the show is when Kara suddenly takes off the glasses, opens up her shirt. Oh, wait, you're Supergirl? Like, they didn't know. But how do you decide how to pace it, and you know, if you're plotting out, maybe you're thinking about, you know, this show could go for several seasons. How do you slowly pace it and do your reveals? You don't want to go too fast, but you also don't want to go too slow.
Well, you know, I think Greg Berlanti and Andrew Kreisberg and myself, we discussed obviously wanting to get as much in every episode as possible. There's a kitchen sink approach, so like we like to get it all in and then pull it back slightly. And I think what we get is 75 years of the canon, and so, you know, I think there's many supervillains to pull on. There's many, now we have Flash coming on Monday. Many multiverses to explore, and so we hopefully will not let our ink well run dry.
Do you feel like people get more hands-on though in network to drive your story differently than you would want sometimes?
I love that you're, hang on.
Sorry. Yeah, it's a little bit too, like, yeah, it's a little bit too much like I'm at a Senate hearing. I don't recall.
Mr. Scheer.
I don't recall that date. I do not recall that gray.
I think that CBS and Warner Brothers have really given us a wide berth to birth, sorry to birth and birth, but a really wide range to explore this character and the many characters, ancillary characters that we have around her, which are, it's very much an ensemble despite the title, and we are excited. I think, as you were saying, Scott, it's really a privilege to make people care about these people, and that's sometimes difficult, especially, you know, with villains that we bring in. And if you can get people to see the villain's point of view and kind of root for that, like, that's actually a good point. And then, you know, whether you kill them or eat them or recycle their blood, that you've made a world care about this person is really the privilege. So even more arduous when you must eat their lungs.
But in the case of Craig's show, they vomit the people out. So.
Just pitching. That sounds great.
You know what else is interesting about all the drama producers on stage? Every single one of you are working on existing intellectual property. You're adapting. Some of these are franchises that have been around for decades. Some are newer. Some are single novels. Melissa, talk about, you know, obviously the Marvel Cinematic Universe is something that you're deeply involved in here, and, you know, as you plot out season 2 of Jessica Jones, there's the Netflix series, there's of course the larger universe. How, going forward now, does Jessica Jones continue to fit into all of that?
Well, I think Marvel and Netflix have done a number of things really well, and one of them is to really give each one of their 4 series their own voice. And so when I was doing the first season of JJ, you know, I had really not seen almost anything of Daredevil, nor had Luke Cage seen very much of what I'd done. So it's really Jeff Loeb, who's the head of Marvel TV. He was kind of the arbiter, the puppeteer. If we strayed into territory that was going to be in another show, you kind of say, well, dial it back. But for that, because they've done it that way, I think each show has a very specific point of view. So I have not been told I need to do or not do any particular thing. I wasn't on the first season, except I had to dial back Luke a little bit because it turned out he had his own series, but but still ended up being able to use him, much to my great good fortune.
Is there anything, how far along are you in season 2 so far? Are you starting to write? What can you tell us?
There's a queue. There's a long queue of these series that we're falling into. So it's gonna be a while.
So it's all in your head right now, but soon pen to paper. Craig, one of the interesting things about Ash vs. Evil Dead is just how much humor there is in the show. And you even have a comedic background. So talk about how you balance the comedy with the gore.
Well, I mean, at some points the gore is part of the comedy, so it's not really, I mean, we handle it in such a way that it isn't scary for the most part. Like, the scary parts can be scary, but I think the gore is pretty over the top. I don't know, I mean, I happened into this, I think I happened into something interesting where the humor comes from this sort of age-old friendship between Sam and Bruce and Rob and all these people. And I happened into something where Sam Raimi, the director, who directed our pilot as well, only did this, I think, to torture his friend Bruce. So it was really cool stepping into this thing where it was like, oh, I get to now help torture this guy. So a lot of the humor and things come from torturing Bruce Campbell, which is great. It's been really fun to do. And I mean, it also, I guess the humor comes from the fact that Bruce is who he is, like in life and on screen. So when you are given this sort of like lead character who's the most charismatic asshole on television, you can kind of do anything you want and keep the scary stuff scary. So I'm never worried about writing something for Bruce and it's going to sound earnest. It's always going to sound like he's delivering it as Ash, which is great. I mean, he's the best, and you never ever worry about him sort of like turning something to be too earnest.
Well, it's funny, and we were talking about this before about Bruce Campbell. He's aged into the role perfectly. He seems to be more ashy than he ever was
really
years ago.
I mean, it was the thing that really drew me to the project was that, a lot of shows do the thing where you have like a 25-year-old guy who's like, I'm never gonna get married, and I'm never gonna go with kids, or like stop partying, and then it's 30, and it's like, oops, I did it, I got a wife. And this guy is 60 and he never did it. So he was great, he just kind of stuck to his guns. And it is, some people say like for better or for worse, and it's for worse. Like, he is a terrible, fun character.
Paul, talk a little bit about, you do all sorts of different kinds of comedy, but one of the things that I love that you do is when you parody things, when you do CRL, or you did the Archerio Paul show before that. What is right for parody these days? Can you still parody things in this day and age?
I always have like a slight, I get nervous about the word parody because I feel like it's become so associated with like Wayans Brothers movies that, and I don't want to be like, a lot of the times I think what we have been trying to do, and we talk about this a lot, is take a genre and then treat it comedically. So there's not like, oh, they did this exact thing on 24, or they did this exact thing here, and we're gonna do that, but make them fart. And that's kind of what I think parody has become.
It's a good pitch.
It is a good pitch, and by the way, and if you steal it,
that show sounds awesome.
My property. But so for us, it's about, and it sounds dumb because we're creating these comedy shows, but it's like creating a world in which these characters exist and trying to build comedy off of it. And I think in the example of Children's, which I've written for, and then NTSF, which I ran and created. Oh, thanks. Thank you. What we did was we tried to create a comedy in that world. So it's kind of building a sitcom, but with these stakes. And I just did a new show that's coming out soon called Filthy Preppy Teens. It used to be called Filthy Sexy Teens, but if you Google that, our show would definitely not come up. And that show basically was turned into a series based on a 15-second trailer that was attached to an episode of NTSF. And we were like, well, let's make this show, but like I'm into those shows, but I can't tell you anything about Pretty Little Liars to the details of it. I've seen a handful of episodes and stuff like that. And it's like, well, let's just create a world with rich, young, hot kids who can murder and do drugs and do all sorts of stuff. And so we kind of build out of there. So that's, you know, for me, it's sort of like, what are the genres that people are talking about? And for Arsenio Paul, where I recreated Arsenio Hall interviews, no one's talking about that, but that was fine for me. Someone's like, we'll give you money to do anything. And I was like, really? Anything? And they're like, yeah. I was like, how about Arsenio Hall recreations? They're like, good, we did it. So, but yeah, no, to me it's like whatever I'm interested in. I'm a fan of every one of these shows. So to be on this stage, like, this is amazing, because these are shows that I love to watch. And in a way, they inspire me to be like, oh, I want to do that, but I can't be cast as the lead of an action show on Fox, but I can put myself as the lead of a comedy show on Fox, you know, or whatever, you know. So that's kind of the distinction of it.
Damon, of course, you and Carlton famously sort of picked the end date for Lost back in the day, and now you have one more season of The Leftovers. Talk about that and what that's allowing you to do. Is this a story that really can be wrapped, or is it just an opportunity to tell maybe 10 more stories before you end things?
I think in both cases, just as a storyteller, for any kind of serialized story, period, coming from the fan perspective, I just want to know how thick the book is before I pick it up. And so the idea of basically having to read a book and every time you put it down, you don't know how many chapters are left is not as exciting as knowing, oh my God, I'm nearing the end. Particularly for Lost, which was built on a mystery foundation, it sort of demanded some level of conclusion. But for The Leftovers, I think it's also a little bit more by feel, and then there's the metrics of our business, which is, you know, how much does a show cost and how many people are watching the show. And for The Leftovers, I think it became pretty clear to us as storytellers, you know, by the end of, as we were moving into the second season, that while we really liked what we were doing, that this was going to be one of those bubble shows where every single year is going to be like, is there going to be another one? And instead of writing the show with that attitude of this could be the series finale, I felt like, hey, let's take control of this thing and say we'd like to do one more, which like was a way of saying, I think you're about to break up with me, so we're breaking up. Like, I just broke up with you. So, but it also felt like by the end of the second season of the show, we were closer to the end than we were to the beginning. That was just by feel. And then I also think that I spent almost 8 years of my life on Lost, which is a long time to work on one project. And for Leftovers, by the time we finish, it'll be 5 years. And for me, it's a fairly monastic experience. You know, I found that I enjoy it more when I'm not working on 5 or 6 other things, and when I'm working on other things, all those things are diluted. They're not as strong as they would have been if I was just working on the one thing. So I want to tell the Leftover story for another year and then move on to something else, because this is conservatively an 80 to 90 hour a week job when we're full steam. And if it's if you have a 50-hour week, or if you have a Saturday where you don't have to do any work at all, that's like a huge, oh my God, that's it. And I
recently reintroduced myself to my children.
Yeah. I mean, this isn't work. This is fun, but you know, it's hard. So
I like the idea, though, and I mean, I'm not in the business that you guys are with the hour-longs, but I like just being like, just call your outs too. It's like I've done, you know, with Human Giant and NTSF and a few other things. Like I'm like, yeah, we did it. Like we told it. Like there's no reason to go on MASH level, like, you know, like 12 years, you know, sometimes it's like, unless you can really reinvent the wheel, because, you know, like I think it kind of helps the audience too. It's like, well, that was a story that was, you know, it feels more like a novel, or it feels more like a movie that just kind of braced over you know, a couple of more hours.
That said, I will literally watch The Walking Dead for another 20 years.
But that's a show that,
AMC will make sure that.
But that's a show also that, like, I think that you guys are really good at being able to, like, you infuse so much into it, and it's a world that allows that. Like, well, not every premise has that.
Well, the real liberating thing too would be is if you could call your out like mid-season. Like episode 5, be like, I'm done. I think we told it.
Yeah,
we nailed it.
With the Walking Dead, just as the end.
Thanks, HBO.
With The Walking Dead, though, as far as like it going on and on, the best metric it is for me is just as a reader of the book, it's going on, and I'm enjoying it. Robert is building in an evolving world, and you know, we're trying to, you know, fulfill his story.
Well, Scott, I was going to say, I mean, next year, with the introduction of Negan, for example, that becomes a different show. So in some ways, you're going a whole new direction next year.
Which, you know, which again just comes from the book. You know, Robert reinvented that story over and over again, and we're following the story's lead.
Allie, what can you tell us about next week's crossover?
It's so exciting how people are, I feel the energy from on social media, and it's just really exciting. It was really fun on set with Grant and coordinating those schedules was a tremendous feast. You know, as we say, it's a super show. It's like making a movie every week, and so getting him down, I know he has the same kind of schedule that Melissa Benoist does, and just watching them together, and they're fighting, you know, 2 supervillains, and I'm thrilled to say they're 2 female supervillains, not that it should matter. But it's just, it's really to see their chemistry together, and I know they worked together on Glee that I met both of them on, and it just was like an amazing trip to 2 worlds and bringing them together. It's the chemistry is huge, and we're so excited for the episode.
Yeah, well, let's talk about television right now. You know, Jessica Jones, obviously, Supergirl, Carol. I mean, my God, Carol. And Melissa, if you want to take this, you know, talk about the environment now and the fact that this is now a welcoming environment in television for really strong female characters. And are we moving in the right direction?
I surely hope so. You know, for so many years, we had these really incredible characters like Tony Soprano, Vic Mackey, Walter White, maybe Dexter. Wonderful dark anti-heroes and all white guys, and there really wasn't as much of an opportunity to, I don't think audiences were ready to have a woman in that role. And then shows you know, started breaking ground like Jenji Cohen's Weeds or Liz Brix's Nurse Jackie. You know, these are all shows in which a woman was able to be a pretty flawed character, and I don't think Jessica Jones exists before those, and I don't know that those exist before the Tony Sopranos and the Walter White, you know, all of those characters. So you know, it's about wooing audiences into allowing a woman, and God forbid she should be a mother, because you know mothers can't be flawed. But regardless, it's nice to be able to, I think it's nice, it's great for all the incredibly talented actresses out there to get something to play other than the noble wife or the sassy cop, or, you know, something.
And Paul actually,
The original Nishant, right, from Conan the Barbarian.
Oh, yeah,
I mean, she was original, badass, a person of color, and unapologetic about being female, and just amazing. We stand on the shoulders of those that came before us, but I can't wait to see what whoever's standing on our shoulders get to do.
and Paul, I wanted to talk on the comedy side as well, obviously. So Party Over Here, your new show, Saturday nights on Fox. It's led by 3 female comedian sketch artists.
Yeah, which is really fun for us because I feel like we wanted to do something a little bit different as far as not have this singular voice. You know, I think, you know, right now, Key and Peele, I feel like they are together as one voice, and Amy Schumer and Chappelle and everything. It's like we could create an ensemble, but that voice be a female comedy ensemble. So it's been really fun to kind of, you know, in many respects, I feel like I've come from a lot of sketches where, you know, like there's the girlfriend or the wife or whatever like this, and then now we have, these women leading this amazing show with these guys on the side, which is, they get to do different stuff, and it's not intentional. It's just sort of like what they're interested in, what they're writing, what they're performing. So it's been fun to just be a part of that and help shepherd that voice out. It's not.
Can we just give away the whole season?
Yeah, just give away the whole season.
I mean, you'd think going into season 2 that would sort of be a bit of a truce that they have, but it doesn't last very long.
Yeah.
Maybe 4 minutes into the first episode. So there's not much of a truce, but that allows us to get back into the fun. But how Lucy plays into this season is much different than you would think she would. Because we had to kind of slow play her first season because she is not who she presents herself to be throughout most of the season. And so you couldn't see her too much or else you'd realize like, oh, she's just lying. So we couldn't show her too much, but then sort of as the season progressed, we showed more and more about who she was. And so when that became apparent that she was the bad guy, for most of the people who haven't seen it, I guess.
It's a spoiler, yeah. It's fine.
She was the bad guy at the end of the season, and then, so it kind of shifts gears a bit into this season.
We're going to open up for some questions right now if you want to line up, as we get people to line up. Let's talk about mashups. Anyone here think they can do a crossover on someone else's show?
I think all these shows together.
Yeah.
One universe.
As an adjunct to a Crisis on Infinite Earth storyline on Supergirl.
We're in. Welcome.
All right, you have a question.
That would be amazing.
Oh, can we turn the
No
mic?
mic. How about you say it and I'll try to guess what you're saying. First of all,
Is it on? Yeah.
Yeah, there you go.
Okay, so I have a question. What in most recent pop culture would be your favorite kill-off?
ooh, that's a good question.
I know. That would be Mr. Poopy Butthole. Rick and Morty. It was sad. It was disturbing. He did survive, though, so I didn't answer the question correctly. But it didn't look like he was going to survive.
Anyone else have a favorite kill?
No, please.
Mine is a little bit different because a real life kill. It was on the show The Prophet. It's a CNBC reality show where a guy goes in and redoes people's businesses. And this guy was holding down Sweet Pete's candy store. And Mark Simonis went in there and said, "Wayne, get out." And he kicked Wayne out. And that was a sweet kill.
All right, thank you so much.
This is for Scott Gimple. Thank you for making me a nervous wreck every Sunday night.
I'm sorry.
But can you speak a little bit about the evolution of Carol?
Carrot, oh yeah.
How are those cookies, by the way?
You know, I've broken down those recipes, so I do Carol's cooking.
Part of the showrunner job is that you do both the baking.
All recipes have to be driven from your office. With Carol, I started on the show, not running the show. I was a writer-producer on the show, and she was a character that I always gravitated towards just because on the hero's journey, she had, the most humble start in as much as she was a victim, and yet she was the one who survived. So was she really the victim? There had to be strength there. And I was lucky enough to write the second season, mid-season finale when, boy, this is a big spoiler, when someone important to her comes out of the barn. And, but no, that won't tell you anything.
There's a barn, I'm out of here.
Going from there and how somebody recovers from that, and how somebody could actually derive strength from that in that world, I just wanted to keep telling that story and see her grow and grow and grow, as she would have to in that environment. But, I have to say, a lot of it goes to Melissa McBride. And just, when you're in this job and you see an actor like that, you know that it's smart to write stuff for them because they'll make it awesome. And it also challenges you to be hopefully as awesome as they are. And Melissa is a strong person, but she doesn't really show it that much. And there's a lot of that in Carol. And it's been incredible. It's been unbelievable to see that character evolve. And it really is one of the joys of serialized storytelling. It is one of the biggest joys of this job, is to take a character that started in one place and go over years to take them to another place. So I should stop talking.
And don't you dare kill Carol. Next up, we have time for a couple more.
Hi, my question is for everyone and also Scott.
You get
Well, what's the
special
process
treatment.
of hiring directors for the show and who directs which episodes? Like, how do you decide which director, you know?
I'm not trying to butter her up, but that's a great question.
And
Actually,
Jennifer Lynch gonna direct any more episodes, and please let her direct, like, all of them.
she did an amazing episode. She did a very bloody episode that I could repurpose some blood your way.
Oh, please. Our budget's so small.
Hiring directors is really, really hard. I think on our shows, maybe Supergirl, it's a different thing. You have 20 slots. That's hard in a different direction. On our show, it's hard because there's so many great directors out there, and you have 16 slots. And also on our show, we have so many great in-house directors. Greg Nicotero does a ton of our episodes, and I'm very lucky to have that. But that cuts our amount of slots down and down and down. But we look for great directors, we look for new directors, we look for veteran directors. We try to get directors from all walks of life, and directors that are passionate about the show. I will say that there was a director I was talking to last year, and we ran out of those slots. And she emailed me after every episode from then on. And this went on for a year and a half. And they were long emails that broke down the episode. And they were pretty brilliant. And so at that point, it was shame on me if I didn't hire her. And I'm really excited that she's going to be directing this season.
That brings up a question actually I had on Twitter for you, Craig. Someone asked me to ask you if Sam Raimi was going to come back to direct any episodes in season 2.
He's not directing an episode this season, but he's very involved in the season.
Great,
So
great.
he will not be directing, but...
Next question.
Hi, this one's for Damon. First of all, I want your hat. Second of all, is Nora going to be okay? Because I'm kind of always worried about that chick. She's like a bunch of mini earthquakes staving off the big one, I feel. So,
Literal earthquake.
I love her though. So.
Thanks for that question. We have a big whiteboard that we use dry erase markers on, and writers' rooms alternately use index cards or whiteboards. But the first words that we wrote on the whiteboard for this final season were Nora, Nora, Nora. And I think that in a lot of ways, as much as Justin Theroux is great and Kevin is, I think, all due respect to the trope, but another one of these kind of fatalistic, dark, tortured white guys. Nora is the character who's been very, very interesting to us. Tom Perrotta, she was my favorite character in his novel, and because she suffered the most acutely, I'm worried about her too. But I do think that whereas the first season of The Leftovers, if you can get through it, that was just about people who were spinning, who were miserable, they were caught in a grief spiral. By the second season, they started wanting to feel better, and I think that we'll continue on that trajectory. So she'll either be fine or she'll die horrifically, one of those two.
Can you tell us if you're moving locations? Will we still be in Miracle, or?
We'll be in Miracle a little bit.
Okay.
And then somewhere else.
And then somewhere else, all right. Well, I guess we don't have any more questions, so...
We had a big line that was just flushed out.
I think they were told, unfortunately, that this is the end of the panel. So I want to thank TV Guide Magazine. I want to thank Rich Sands, Damian Holbrook, Geraldine, Rich, Bob, everyone. And Marissa.
Thank you guys.
Thank
You're welcome.